Here's a problem that at first seems like it's going to be simple to solve, but once you get into it, a facet of that solution becomes a little bit tricky. Now, luckily, the solution is pretty simple, but discovering it is the trick. So what I'd like to be able to do is type in a dollar value in US dollars, and then have that value converted into the currency of another country, using, of course, the applicable exchange rate. So I have a very small table off to the side here that just has the exchange rates for the euro, the British pound, and the Japanese yen, and these are relative to a single US dollar. This green table was brought in using Power Query. This is the website that I pulled these numbers from, and I did it using Power Query so that way I could refresh the table and get the current values from a day-to-day basis. Now, I didn't want all of these countries, I just wanted 3. So Power Query is going to connect to that website, extract the applicable table, and then filter it down just for these 3 regions. Now, pulling in that data using Power Query is outside of the scope of this particular video. But if you're interested in doing that, I have many Power Query videos on the channel. Just check out the Power Query playlist. Now, this second table is where I'm going to type in the US dollar value that I'm trying to convert. So let's just say it's something like $525. I want the user to be able to pick one of those 3 countries, and so I have a data validation drop-down list, and all it's doing is pointing to those 3 cells in column A with the other country names. So if I pick something like British pound, I'd like to have this $525 multiplied by the appropriate conversion rate, in this case the British pound 0.734359. Now it seems like you would just perform a lookup operation, find the selected item in D3 from this column, and then return this number from column B. That would then be multiplied by the amount, which would then give us our converted rate. So let's go ahead and perform this lookup operation with an XLOOKUP function. We want to look up whatever the user selected in D3, comma. We're going to look it up in the first column of this exchange rates table, comma, and if we find a match, we want to return something from the second column of the exchange rates table. Close parentheses, hit enter, and it pulls over the exchange rate. Now we have to take that exchange rate and multiply it by the amount in cell E2. So I'm going to go in front of this XLOOKUP. I could do this at the end, but I'm going to do it at the front and say, let's take what's in E2 and multiply it by the rate returned from the exchange rates table. Now I have this formatted with a currency style, but the currency style is not what the British pound should be using. And look what happens if I change this to the euro. It's still using a dollar sign for the currency. And if I change this to the Japanese yen, it's still using the dollar sign. What I need is for that currency symbol to change based on the exchange rate of the country it's coming from. Now I could go up here to my formatting and I could change this to one of any of these listed country symbols. So I could change this to Japanese. Hit OK, and now I'm looking at the Japanese yen symbol. But if I switch this over to the euro, I don't want to see the Japanese yen symbol, and I don't want to have to come back here, go into custom number formatting, and then go find the euro, and then switch it to this. This is the problem. Every time I switch to a different currency exchange rate, I have to manually change the currency symbol. Let's see how we can change that currency symbol dynamically based on the selected exchange rate and currency. The first thing we'll do is revert the currency style back to general, so it basically has no style at all. We're going to apply formatting via a function, and that function is known as the text function. Now, the text function can be used to apply all sorts of different formatting, from date and time to currency to scientific to percent style. This video isn't intended to be a comprehensive training session on all the different possibilities of the text function, but it is enough to get you pointed in a direction where you can do some independent research. Now, at its core, let me show you how the text function works. We type in equals text, and then we point to some value, or that value could be derived from a formula. So I'll just point to this cell right here, E3, comma. Then in double quotes, we need to provide a set of codes. Now, I'll show you how to discover these codes through a little cheat, but it is a good idea to learn what these codes are so you can create your own custom styles. But let's say that I wanted that number to just be formatted to 2 decimal places. I will type in a 0.00, hit enter, and now I see that number formatted as 2 decimal places. If I wanted that to have a dollar sign in front of it, well, I'll just put a dollar sign in front of it. Now I would need to switch out whatever this symbol is for the selected country, and that puts me right back in the original problem. So what we'll use is a switch function, and the switch function will detect which of these countries the user selected and then apply the appropriate text function for formatting. So let's delete that test. Now if I was doing this for real, I would use this X lookup to detect whatever country the user selected and then go pull the appropriate exchange rate. But to make sure that we understand exactly what's going on, I want to make this function as simple as possible. So I'm going to do a little hard coding, which goes against my very nature, but just for training purposes, it will make the finished formula a bit more understandable. So if the user were to select euro, I would take the value entered in E2 and then multiply that by the value in B2. If they pick British pound, I'll multiply E2 by B3. And if they pick a Japanese yen, I'll multiply E2 by B4. So this is all hard-coded, but again, it's just to keep the overall formula simple. So let's start off with a switch function. So the switch function is going to look and see whatever the user selected in cell D3, comma. If they selected euro, comma, then I want to take the value of E2 and multiply it by the value of B2. Let's open up our formula bar to make this next bit a bit easier. In fact, I'll take this piece and just put it down to another row. So let's examine D3. If it says euro, take E2 times B2. But if it says British pound, then I'm going to take E2 and multiply it by B3. Lastly, let's expand this out again. If it says Japanese yen, let's take E2 and multiply it by B4. Close parentheses for the switch, hit enter. Now at the moment, all this is doing is the conversion. It's not applying the formatting, but let's make sure that this part is working. So if I go up here and I pick British pound, I get a different calculation. If I pick Japanese yen, I get another different calculation. So we want all these to be formatted based on the country selection. So going back to the original switch function, we're going to wrap each of these multiplication bits inside of a text function. So we can take the result of that multiplication and apply formatting to it. So let's start with euro. Now, if you're not sure what the formatting codes are for the euro, here's a way you can cheat. Let's hit escape. Our cheat test will come off to the side here, and we'll just put in a number like 100. If we go up to the formatting styles dropdown and then go down to more number formats, if you ever want to know the formatting codes for a specific format, like let's say that you went into the currency style and you said, hey, this is the style that I want, $ as the currency symbol, 2 decimal place precision. Once you've selected that through the GUI, if you go down to custom, these are the format codes for that particular setting. So if you went into something like the date styles, and let's say you scroll down and you said, hey, I really like this particular style with the full month name, the day, and the 4-digit year, but I don't know what the codes for that are. Then you go down to custom, and you can see those codes right here. If you did an accounting style and you wanted this to be in Bitcoin with 6 decimal place precision, go down to custom, and this is quite a mouthful here, but here are the codes for that style. Now we're going to do something simple. We're going to use a currency style, and we scroll down and we find euro. And I'm going to pick the one where the euro symbol is in front of the number. 2 decimal place precision. If I go down to custom, here is the code for that. You can highlight that, Control-C copy, cancel. I could then go to our test number, wrap that inside of a text function, and say take the number 100, and then in double quotes, apply this particular format code. Close parentheses, enter, and now I'm formatting the cell using a function. Now here's a cheat on top of a cheat. If all you want is this euro symbol, you don't actually need all of this. So I could take most of that out and just leave it as the euro symbol, and I'll get the same thing. So now this is the code that I'm going to use. I'm going to copy that. If I go back into my original formula, if the user picks euro, I want to do this multiplication, but I want to format the result. So I'm going to wrap that inside of a text function, comma, then in double quotes, the code set. Close parentheses for the text function. When I hit enter, now I get formatted values. Now if I pick the British pound, I'm going to lose that formatting. Same thing for the yen, but if I go back to euro, I get the formatting. So we just need to figure out what the codes are for the British pound and the Japanese yen. So I'll go to my little test number. I'll go back up to my number formatting, more number formats, currency style, and I'll go find the British pound. So here we are. If I want to know what the codes are for that, I go to custom, and here's the code set. I'll copy that, cancel. I'll go back to my original function, wrap the British pound conversion inside of a text function, and then in double quotes, give it that code set. Now, as before, the only thing I really need in here is the British pound symbol, so I'll take all that other stuff out. Hit enter. If it's a euro, I get the euro conversion with the euro symbol. If I choose British pound, I get the British pound conversion with the British pound symbol. Lastly, Japanese yen, I'll go to my little test number, number formatting, more number formats, go to Currency, drop down from my country list, and I find Japanese. I'll go to Custom. This is the code set for that. I'll copy it, cancel, go back into my switch function, and wrap the Japanese calculation inside of a text function, comma, in double quotes, the code set for Japanese. All I really need is that Japanese yen symbol. Hit enter. I have British pound conversion with British pound symbol, Japanese yen conversion with the Japanese yen symbol, euro conversion with the euro symbol. So here's the finished formula. We use a switch function to detect what country the user selected in D3, and then based on that selection, we take the amount entered in E2, multiplied by the appropriate exchange rate, and then apply formatting to that result using the text function. Now, if you really want to make this bulletproof, what happens if the user doesn't pick a country? Well, then we get a pound NA. Or what happens if the user doesn't type in an amount? Then we get 0 as our conversion. Well, in that case, we could add some error checking to this switch function. I'm going to pull my formula down a bit more. I could do something like if the amount for the United States dollar value is blank, so I'll use an isBlank function, and I'll just point to cell E2. If that's blank, then show nothing. Otherwise, execute the switch function. We'll add an extra close parentheses at the end of this, enter. So now if the user does not enter in a value for the United States dollar value, this field just shows nothing. Now what happens if they do enter in a dollar value, but they don't pick a country? Well, I don't want to see a pound NA error. Well, then I can wrap all of this inside of an if error function. And at the end of it, I'll just tell it to show nothing if it is an error. So if they don't enter a dollar value, they don't pick a country, we don't see anything. If they enter a dollar value with no country, we get no conversion. If they don't enter in a dollar value, but they do pick a country, we don't see anything. It's only when they pick a country and they enter in a dollar value that we actually get the conversion to execute. So the two big takeaways from this are understanding that you can apply formatting to values via the text function. That way you can have the formatting change based on the circumstance. But also discovering what those formatting codes are, if you're not very familiar with them, is to just do a little cheat, where you can go into the more number formats, use the GUI to find out the exact formatting style that you prefer, and then once selected, go to Custom and just read whatever codes are here and copy and paste that into your text function. If you want to know more about these codes, just Google Excel custom number format, and whatever the first 2 or 3 websites or videos that pop up, watch them. They're going to be good. They may look a little scary, but once you understand them, they're not that bad. Feel free to download this file with all of the solutions built in, so that way you can go back and reverse engineer the project. And just to reiterate before I get a lot of angry comments in the comments section, if I was doing this for real, I would not be statically pointing to these specific cells, especially if my green table changes. So I would perform lookups for many of the parts of this function. Since lookups weren't the focus of this lecture, I left them out. That way we could focus on what's really important here. Thank you for watching, and remember, at BCTI, the learning never stops.